Hello relatives. Today we are going to be making a 24-inch round drum with a 32-inch head in the Oglala style. I'm going to be doing a special wrap, so 16 points with 2 holes at each point help distribute the tension on the hide. And I'm going to do a double spiral X. So it starts with a 4-way straight wrap, and then I spiral one side and I spiral the opposite side towards itself. So it makes like a little X. This is ambidextrous, so you can hold it in the left or right, which is one thing I like about this double X style. It's also pretty neat looking, and I hope you enjoy it. I'm going to be running through this real-time demo now. All right, so we have blessed our space with our flat cedar, sage, and cobalt, and now it's time to start making the holes. I have about a 5 millimeter punch, which is like 7 30 seconds, I think, and we're just gonna get going with this build. Let's see. Keep my trusty red scissors handy. Oh. This is our 50 foot piece of elk lace, 1/4 inch, that we're going to use in a second. So first things first is we want to find a good matching edge over here for our holes. This is not a perfectly cut circle, and things seem to have moved around in the first drawing and then the second drawing, so I'm going to say that's pretty good. So we turn our first set of holes towards us to create 2 hole punches, and this is going to create 2 points. So about a thumb's width away from the edge is always a practical starting point. So we go like that. That's our center. I have this round maul from Leather Tooling. I really like it, but you can use other kinds of mallets to hit your punch. There we go. Finger width apart. All right. So we got 4 holes total and 2 points done. So I'm gonna turn this and flip it while keeping the holes at the edge, and that's gonna give me my new 90. Again, we're thumb width away, we're finger width out, come in with our hole punch. I like working from the ground because even though you're leaning over your project a lot, something about being able to stretch your legs and is a lot easier. The ground's a lot easier to pound on than a table, which might bounce and have resistance to hole punches and stuff like that. And it's a larger work area. So, all those things add up to me. Now, in between each set of the corners, we have to add 3 holes. So as you see, we have a little bit of dissimilarity with how much height is coming out over. And so each time I'm just going to pinch it. So I'm going to turn it. This is going to be my first 45. I just kind of use my hands and fingers to find it like that. Pull it in to the right part of the edge. Hold my punch there. 1. Hopefully I got this one out too, yeah. And then 2. All right. So I like to just move my cutting pad for these short distance holes. Again, it's just a matter of finding the center in between those 2. Just right about there. Pinching the edges together, creating a thumb's width, and getting into the height. We got 1. 2. Slide it back over here. have, let's see, lining up our holes. That's good right there. Okay, it's coming along. I'm going to turn this carefully. Keep the holes relatively good to each other. Okay, again, we find the middle by tracing it with our eyes and hands, finding it right about there. Right, just like before, we're slide our punch pad there, find it. Again, about a finger's width away from the other hole. Right. So we flip it over, we should have 16 sets of holes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. All right, we're ready to get started. We're gonna take our pad out, make sure that we have the hair side. This is, like I mentioned earlier, cow lace, cowhide. You know, there's little scratches and imperfections, and I even have a tiny nail hole on another hide. So people ask, you know, is that going to be really detrimental to the drum? Is it going to tear there? I've had some pretty thin spots in my time making drums, and those places are going to be the where it's going to break first, but rarely have I seen them actually break. So it takes a lot of time, mistreatment, you know, getting dirt on your beater or your head and hitting that spot. I'm not too worried about it. These little scratches are very interesting. They're just like, they seem like little cuts from the processing. But again, I'm not worried about it. This is going to shrink up and bind together and be really strong. All right, so we have our 32-inch round down. We're going to get our frame and place it, you know, center-ish, because we're going to be finding the center anyways. In all the classes, you will be pulling the majority of this wind of elk hide through each and every hole multiple times, but you don't have to pull the whole thing through. And so I recommend starting with 10 bow lengths of hide for your main thread, or you can remove it from the back end by just getting a little bit less, so it's going to be 6. So 1, 2, 3. These are not bow, these are like arms lengths. 4, 5, 6. I feel really good with that. What usually happens with this part at the end is it becomes our extra handles. So the way I like to try to end this lace is by, I'll show you first, starting out with 2 arms lengths of the lace, and then tying a little knot. Just it's like a little slip knot. It's just sort of a placeholder so that we can visually track where it's going to end up here in a second. Now, it's rare that you get true knots when you're lacing rawhide, but they do get tangled. And to avoid that, you just want to be really conscientious of how fast you're pulling things, and kind of just always lay it down like a garden hose so that it doesn't get uh, bound up in a negative way. It usually just wastes time, and you actually dry out the lace faster, which gives you less working time on your project. Now, with the first end that was shorter that we just made a little knot for, always make sure there's a little bit of a taper, and there is on this one. Otherwise, I would just cut a 45-degree angle taper. And you're always going to go from the outside in a clockwise way. So I'm going clockwise. So at the 6 o'clock, I'm going from like 6:25 to 6:35, right? So that looks like right to left here. It switches depending on where you're going, and that's why I say just go clockwise, you'll be fine. So we go from the outside to the inside in that direction, and then we go to the second hole of the same set and we pull it out. Now we've gone from the outside in to the inside out. And you will go through both holes at every point for every project. Now there we have our little tie knot, and it's on the outside right now. And so that just lets us know that we've hit that perfect spot that we measured with the 2 arms length. Now with the remainder of this, I'm going to make a bobbin. You'll see me do this a lot. It's just like 3 to 4 wraps, and then you take it off your hand, and then you just wind up the rest of the rawhide behind it. This is especially useful towards the end where you're wrapping your handles. It's just a good way of storing it as well. So I'm just going to make a half hitch right here, tie it, knots on the outside, and then I'm going to do a quick slip knot. And this is going to be my locked knot. It's actually quite taut, and the reason is we're going to come back to this at the end, and it's going to make our second handle, but we don't need this part to move, so it's just going to be like that. Because this is Oglala, we're going to just temporarily put our holes over the edge of the frame and just rest it there. Okay, so now we're going to move on to our working lace. And it's just really important to always keep good track of the tip, because if you lose the tip in the center of your garden hose, then you're always going to be looking for it. It's always going to be a hassle. It's going to extend the length of the project, and it's going to reduce your working time depending on like your humidity conditions. So from either direction, I could pick left or right and then count 8. I'm going to end up at the exact opposite of where I'm looking, which is like my 12 o'clock position. Now, if I had gone from here, I would have be going from the inside out, which we don't do. We always go from the outside in a clockwise direction, okay? Outside in. Now that because I'm inside, I go inside out, and now I have 2 holes in there, okay? So I'm going to pull this length right here and make sure my tip is just somewhere I remember it. And because of the positioning that I'm in right now, I can do this double hand pull through, which is really nice. It's fast. It's happening quite quickly. Excellent. This almost got bound up in there. And we are starting our first tie over. So you're gonna scooch the ravioli out. That's like where it gets really bound up like that, just by holding it with your thumb and forefinger and pulling it through the other side. This is taut, but not tight. Tightness is really interesting for a lot of new people because of how strong it actually you have to make it truly tight. It's like if you're doing a pull up on this piece of lace. It can carry like lots of weight, upwards of 90 pounds, I would easily say. So the first one is just hot. It's just so that we can start visualizing where our holes are going to land in the future. Now, as you go through your first wraparound, it's super important to keep pulling uh, slack out of the head, because you could have really tight lace and a really loose head and end up with a dull sounding flat drum. And that's exactly what we want to avoid. We want to instead focus on getting the slack out of the head as we go, because it's harder to do it once you've gone through a second tightening or a third tightening. It gets super hard to do. You might even have to undo your tightening just to get the slack, your finger, just enough slack for your fingers to slide in between to pull it up. So we've started at the 6 o'clock position. We ended at the uh, 12 o'clock position just now. And like everything I said, you're always going clockwise and outside in. So now we're at 6:30 or 7 o'clock. We go from the outside in. When we go through both holes and we pull our slack through. Now, it's easier sometimes to pinch your rawhide against the frame while you're doing this pull through, because when it's loose, there's actually more friction in the holes, and to avoid that, you just kind of hold it with your other hand, and this just makes it faster and easier. Now, I will have to get a cup of water here in a second, because by the end of the project, by the time we're like circling back around to our first tightening, this lace will have become very dry. And it becomes dry because every time you pull it through a set of holes, it's wicking itself. And so we have to keep it moist enough to be workable. All right, so now we've completed the 7 o'clock. Now we're coming back to the 1 o'clock outside in, and we're going to go through both holes. So this got a little dull of a tip just from working it, so I just give it a new 45 degree and I tap it back in. Might have to do that a few times or not. Just depends on if you're lucky. All right, so it's on the upper side. It's a pretty big drum, so it has a natural friction that's like keeping it on the mat. But if you didn't, you can just use your knee at this point. If you're on a table, then you have to use your hips, or you can actually rest your forearms on the side of the drum closest to you and just pull it through. It is a little bit tasking, but I would say that drum making is a little bit more. It's probably going to be a lot more physical for everybody that does it, more so than they thought it would be. All right, so we've done the 1 o'clock. We're coming back to like the 7:30, 8 o'clock area, and we're gonna just keep doing what we've been doing. So I put the tip to the side there. I'm making sure that my garden hose just stays in a neat pile so it doesn't get tangled. Oh, I see some ravioli here that I left behind, so I gotta pull that through the hole so it doesn't encumber. Now, the reason you don't leave ravioli or like kind of turned over, wound up lines in there is because those actually hold slack as well, and you want to avoid leaving any dead slack in your drum, period. All right, so we pulled it through, we have our tip, we go to the 1:32 o'clock area, outside in. Now, Oglala style drums are a lot easier to make from a winding session, because the lace is touching rawhide most of the time. It's quite easy to maneuver it through, and when you're making a Salish drum, it's actually going over the frame, meaning that it's actually drying out a lot faster. That gives you less working time. That makes you have to moisten your lace more often as you go, and it makes the tightening process a lot, in a ways, a little bit more difficult, because when you're pulling the tension out, you're doing so in an Oglala style, you're doing it as it goes over more rawhide, and it's just easier to pull. It's not going to dry out and catch onto your surface as much as with a Salish style. And so I would say, having experienced this now with a few classes, that yeah, Salish is actually kind of an intermediate drum. It takes a little bit more time and attention, and it's something that I would, only offer in private workshops or to people that have already done the Oglala style, because you're just gonna be, well, the tips and tricks that you learn from your first drum build are gonna be really important, but it's really hard to master all of that at once if Salish is the first style of drum you make. Again, it's totally possible. I've learned that, there's just so many different, in a group as big as 10, like there's just too many different people that are at different paces. And so I just would do smaller groups or a private session for Salish classes specifically. Now, when it comes to Oglala style, it only allows me to do a few more people. I like to try to give everyone the appropriate amount of attention. So I would probably, not make those classes too much bigger anyways. All right, so we've come back through. We have a lot more coming over on this side. On this side, we're actually kind of not as much. So I'm gonna do this pulling through where I get my fingers kind of like under this rawhide, so that by lifting the frame off, it takes the tension and the bite up, and I'm able to pull the hide towards the edge of the frame, and then up the wall, which is also important because every part of the hide is holding slack, right? So if you only massage one part of it, you're leaving everything that you didn't touch with slack in it. So that's kind of the balance that you're trying to overcome. So yeah, I can see that when I do this pull, it's not so obvious from your point of view, but you have this little ridge right here. Just watch me pull it down. There you go. And now it's gone. See, then it comes back, right? I'm doing it on purpose, right? It's the smallest amount that it moves. Sometimes a quarter inch, or in that case we had a lot, so it was a half inch. But in the future, like as you're going through these tightenings, it'll move just an eighth of an inch. But that's enough to completely change the longevity of your drum, the tone of your drum. And so it's important to really to maneuver that out. All right, so we got our tip again. We started over there. You see I've kind of rotated it a little bit so I can get to that. I'm gonna put it back to where it was. My tip's getting blunt. It's happening real fast now. Tips. Again, new 45. All right. Some holes are just more challenging than others. That's just the way it is. I'm going to put it way over here just to see if that's helpful. This is a different technique. By holding the tension, it's almost like I kept my hand there, and that's important tip, because if I let go, then that's when it loses the fact that I've taken the holes over the frame, and it could make it harder to keep doing in this fashion. So as long as you're holding consistent tension throughout a lot of these pulls, it's just going to be easier for you. You're going to be faster. It's just going to make the whole process more enjoyable. All right. So 6 o'clock, we're kind of like at the 3:30 spot right here. And when we come back, we'll be at the 10 o'clock area. Outside, in, then inside, out. Let's see, got that. All right, see, just like before, keeping the tension, it's helping all the lace come through much more efficiently. Coming over here to pull more tension out of the face, and then you see that slack that created. allowed me to pull more lace behind it. All right, resetting it just so I can keep my groove going here. We got the tip, we're in the 1030 zone. We're going from the outside in to the inside out. Drag it over here, keep the tip safe. Nice tension coming over the wall. We got a tangle. Sometimes they're easy to get out with that. Sometimes you gotta fight a little harder. All right. Oh, almost lost my tip there. All right. So this part, let's see, we can get a little more tension out. Nice, nicely done. All right, I'm just gonna make this my new working direction. With a large drum like this, sometimes you have to adjust a little bit. That's obviously one thing that's a little different than the standard 16 or 18-inch drums. By the way, the way that drum frames are sized, it seems, is in a kind of funny nominal way. A 16-inch drum isn't exactly 16 inches wide. It's kind of like 2x4 wood. It's just like there's a nominal size. So I have a lot of 12-inch drums that are like 11.5 and 15-inch drums that are like 14.2, and the 16-inch drums that I upgraded people to in my last class was because certain manufacturers will make their 15-inch drums with 8 layers, and then their 16-inch drums with 10 layers, and there's kind of a sizable difference in it. I think that having those extra layers really helps. But those 16-inch drums aren't 16 inches, they're like 15 and a half. So yeah, there isn't a huge price difference either. So yeah, I just stopped ordering 15-inch drums because of that difference in the durability. Now, if you're focusing on having a lighter drum and it's rather large, then yeah, then there is reason to have a lighter frame, lesser thickness drum frame. But that's just not where I want to direct people with these tools. I just want them to be a little bit more durable, stronger, and yeah, I think that you'll just be more satisfied with these dimensions and the sizing. All right. We got about 3 more sets of holes, and then we will start to become ready for the transition. Now the transition really just is going from this tie, right, your first tie through, creating the stems of the 16 point, and then the transition is moving towards your final tightening and then your handles. All right, get that tight. See, these holes are pretty close to the edge, so that tells me that I should try to get as much tension, slack out as I can. Because once you've buttoned up all these walls, it's really hard to get down in there. Now, as I mentioned before, this is my drinking water, but I'm going to have to use it right now. So make sure that my working lace is still got some moisture in it. So sometimes I'll have like a bowl or a bag of water or a cup of water, just some way to get water onto your working lace to keep it hydrated enough so that it just slides more easily over itself and the holes that you're using. All right. Let's see. Outside in. Looks like this is the 15th hole. And then we're about to end on the 16th. that tip safe over there. There we go. Now I'm going to turn it so my 6 o'clock is right here, and you typically should always end your final hole right next to where you started, unless you have an odd set, and then you'll end up on the other side. Let's see, we're going from the outside in. And the inside out. Now these folds right here, you could choose to scallop them off and take them away, but I like their look and I just fold them down. And if you scallop them away, it's a lot easier to do it when it's still laid out flat, so you kind of make it like a nice little oval. It's kind of sort of hard to see that as well when you've already tied it up like this. Okay. So we're getting those last 2 holes together. We're taking our extra lace and we're just putting it into the center. Again, this is just to help protect it from dehydration. Obviously, if it's touching dry surfaces, it's wicking away faster. And so I reached my fingers and my knuckles down into the drum. I pulled up that slack over the edge. And just with this last knot, I'm going to make a quick slip knot just to kind of be a place keeper. Because one of the first things we do is we do our binding test. We just push down with a lot of our body weight. Obviously, if it's moving more than 1 inch or even 1/2 inch, like that's too loose. But before we go through the lace tightening, we have to go through head tightening, because head tightening has to happen first. Otherwise, you'll end up with tight laces, a loose head, and it's really hard to tighten your head when you have tight laces. Okay, so just like before, when we started, this is my starting hole, and when I started, it was really, the holes were easily over the frame, but now they're actually kind of resting on it. So I need to pull that up and tie it down, and you can see maybe that this got loose very quickly, right? So let me just practice by pulling a little bit of slack out of that. Now that looseness is over here. So as I go back and forth on this initial tightening, I'm going to be working it always in a clockwise direction. So because you're in a clockwise direction, if you get lost, like when you're tightening and you're pulling the left side string, or the just the further in time string, wherever you are, that's going to be the one that's going to tighten the drum. And if you're pulling the one behind that, going backwards in time, you're going to be loosening it. So that's why it's really helpful to just maintain the same pattern as well. So this one's fine. The holes are beyond the hole. That one's good. In fact, it might almost be too good over here. Let's see if there's anything we can do, because as long as we're good everywhere, like evenly distributed, the holes are at least on the frame, but they should be over, then you're in a better position. So nice, as I see now, pulling good. Let's see. So in the moment where the slack is over here on the working side and the holes aren't too tight, it's a nice opportunity to use that extra slack at the moment to pull it over. And yeah, that's working really well. I'm not worried about that side, it's too good. Nice. This one's fine, so let's just go. This one's actually quite close to the edge, so we're going to come over here. Grab some of that hide and pull it through. Continue over here now. Let's see. I think this side is also, again, kind of close. Plus, the more slack that you pull out of the head, the better it's going to be, period, because if there's any slack in the head, it's going to sound flat, and that's exactly the kind of the worst case scenario that you want to avoid. All right, coming through on these final pulls here in the first level of tension. All right. So if I do the quick math, this is the slack I have. It's about 6 inches times 2, so about a foot. Now that's just me working on positioning of the edges, right? So usually on a first pull, you'll end up with, and the size of the drum matters too. Like the bigger you get, the more you'll get. Is a few more inches than that. So starting to feel really good about. I'm feeling good about these edges. They're all covering appropriately. This one's a little down, but that's okay. That's my starting one. So from my starting one, I'm gonna just do exactly what I said from earlier. I'm gonna make sure that, oh wait, this is my ending one. And I knew that was weird because it had just a slip knot. This one has a slip knot and a lock knot. So from this one, you use your fingers to kind of like squeegee the noodle and pull out any remaining slack. Now, some of these are kind of drier, so that means that it's already hard to make them, to pull out slack from them. But that's okay, because we are getting just enough, and we're holding or constantly holding onto that tension. We're never letting it go, because if we do that, then it just rebounds backwards, and you either have to pick it back up, or you'll mistakenly think that you did pick it up, and there will be slack in your line. So don't do that. So I like to pull it towards the middle and then kind of grab my secondary hand and then transfer it and then pull it out. So you see, taking away all this slack. And when you get to like, a point, you push and pull. I'm pulling and I'm pushing, and that hand trade-off really helps get more slack out. Over here. Same thing, it just looks a little reversed. I'm pulling and I'm pushing. Pulling and I'm pushing. Yeah, see, right when I thought I was good, I slid my thumbs from the middle to the center and I got another ½ inch. Now, it doesn't seem like much, but when you do that ½ inch 16 times, you got 8 more inches out, and that can be the difference between a drum that goes flat earlier or a drum that doesn't, or one that just sounds great and one that sounds okay. So definitely emphasize how much you really want to make sure that all the slack is out. So now, this is about the slack I pulled out. That's a foot times 2, so that's 24 inches. Now, usually on the final tightening, like when you're going around and really bear hugging it, like you'll only get maybe less than 10 inches. So how do I know if it's tight enough? Like, one, you absolutely tried your hardest to get slack out and you did. Now, the other way is just really simple. You just push on the middle and you see if there's any kind of slack. Now, I feel some, so there's some out there. So I'm going to try to go for this final tightening. It's right there. I'm pushing a lot of weight on it. It's dipping down an inch, and I said an inch is too much. Kind of try to get it down to a ½ inch. So here we go. Final tightening. It's going to go a little quick. I have about 3 inches of slack already collected. We're almost at the halfway point here. Almost there. All right, we're back here at the beginning. We have about 4 inches, 4.5 times 2 is about 8, 9 inches. And yeah, that was an effort. So with this final tie through, you don't really have we're good at the beginning, and making the handle makes it even tighter. So that's why I'm not too worried right now. So here we have my bobbin. I just let go of that. I can already see it untying. It's okay. I'm going to be able to recapture that slack here in a second after I make my bobbin. So I just again wrapped it around my hand 3 times, took it off my hand, and then started winding around that. It's really impressive how much it really unwinds. So like, yeah, I saw it moving a lot right here. All right, so now we took off our slip knot. We have our bobbin. We're going to go across town and drop through whatever street is higher. And by higher, I just mean further away from the center. So that one's right there. This one's further away from the center. I'm going to just drop in right there. Take my thread and pull it down. And a lot of the times, drums seem like their center is somewhere off center, and that's okay. Like that's usually to be expected. So I'm not worried about that. Now it's in a better position. Okay, I go over once, I pull through, it's in center, I'm keeping the tension in this hand. I go over again one more time, and now we have a bite in the middle so that, I can lightly let go of this and it's not gonna like unwind itself. All right, so now we're here, we have a 16 pattern, and we're gonna make a square 4-way handles that are gonna be spirals. So I pick just the first 4. You can pick different 4, but I always like picking these ones. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4. I go under and I go over all of them. I go over all of them and I pull real tight. Okay. Go over all 4, under all 4, and I pull really tight. I've done that twice. I'm going to do it 10 times. I like to do things in multiples of 3 or 5. 5 because 5 is your hand. You have 5 fingers. Mamni is the word for 5 in Yaqui. Oh, let's see, we'll wind this up a little bit. We're at 4, 5, yep, looking good. 6, and these are pretty tight pulls. 7, 8. The other thing about pulling it 10 times, 9, is that it usually allows you to put at least 2 fingers over that. And if you do it every direction, then you'll always be able to at least grip it with your 4 fingers. But now you'll see, aesthetically, it's a big drum, so I'm going to do just 2 more at least to kind of make it feel nicely weighted. 2, 1 more, 3, 13. All right. So for a right-handed drum, which is held in your left hand, we usually have to build up the spiral in this direction towards your left hand that you're going to be holding it with, even though because you're beating it with your right hand. If you're left-handed and you're using that for your stick, well then you switch it up. We're going to do both ways because we're going to make this an ambidextrous drum. So we're going to delete 1 thread. So we're going to go down to 3. We're going to go over 3 and up, back, under that one. So that's 1, 2, 3. Probably going to be somewhere between 5 and 7. 4. 5. 5 looks good. Let's see. So we have 7. We have 5. I don't know. Maybe just 1 more. 6. Okay, so now that we've locked in 6, we're gonna stick with that number. So we delete 1, we get the next 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now we delete 1 more. We do it 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, with this one, I always use like a little half hitch, so I just make a little bucket. You know, it could be 1 finger. I'm showing you 3 fingers. You bring it up and over, and you take the whole bobbin through that little tie, and then you just do 1 more of those, coming out the opposite direction. And you have like a very low profile knot there. We have a lot of extra here, and might use that for a handle, so I'm gonna rest that to the side. I'm going to come over here and add a little bit of water. This was, not touched since the beginning, so it's particularly dry by comparison. That 1 slip knot really helps to allow us to take that out really easily and undo the other knot that helped us with our lock knot earlier. Now we just undo all this, and then boom, we have our new strand. Now, because this is going to be an ambidextrous drum, like I said, these spirals aren't going to all go the same way. There's going to be 2 touching and another 2 touching, and it's going to look like an X. So again, just take the slack out here, drop back the opposite side. I'll go 1 and 2. Now we have a bite there. That just keeps us. Now, this is going to be the opposite. We're going to grab 1, 2, 3, 4, and wrap over and under, and then build the handle back this way. So here's what that's going to look like. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. All right, we're going to delete this one this time. It's going to come back towards each other. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a 6. Drop 1, over 2, under 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. All right, just like before, you create a little hole here, go back through it once, make a knot, create another one, come back under it, and we're going to rest this right here. So now we have, again, nice little X started here. We have a lot of extra lace over here. It's almost enough to create our handle, but we do have our original working piece right here. So I'm just gonna moisten that up. And that's all you need sometimes, just to kind of bluntly water it down. And it doesn't have to be like white, which is kind of like when it's over soaked. This has to be soaked enough. And I'm gonna take 2 arms length of it, so 1 and 2. And before I do that, I think I'm going to decide that I'm going to reuse this one as my next handle, just to see if I could be really efficient in using up the material that I pulled really tautly. Yeah, because this is enough for another handle. I just want to use this up before I mangle some fresh lace. That I don't need to do that. So again, 2 arms lengths amount, and I'm gonna work these 4 together. So someone said this is just like jewelry making in the sense that sometimes we have to learn to hide our mistakes, or they're not mistakes, but like when you're finishing the ends of jewelry, like earrings and bracelets, and you have your findings going, you'll have a little piece of wire sticking out. And the best way to avoid, to diminish that is just by hiding it. So you take a little bit of lace and you go over, actually you come up in the middle so that it doesn't move too much. You go over one side, come back under. Let's see, let's go this other way. Yeah, like that, and then we come back under. Now we're taking this end and we're just kind of tucking it in between these lines because they're gonna get hidden. It's gonna get buried in the mix. So we have like a lot of extra right now. We're just gonna snip that out. Let's just discard, and we're gonna start wrapping. So this next 4 are going to be the opposite. So I'm going to make sure that I bind up this side with my lace. So I go over 1, 2, 13 times, 3, 4. The first bit weren't tied so tightly, so I'm going to unwind it just to come back and give it the appropriate tension that it needs to be a thin handle at the top. Oh, really lost it. 4. 5. 7. 8. Let's get this guy and flip it off. 9. 10. 11. 12. 13. All right, so we said we're going to grab so we want this one to end over here, so of course we're going to wrap this one and delete from over here. So over 4, under 4. So I just added one more to that. That's okay. All right, we're going to grab these 3. So over 3, under 3, 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Great. I think we're okay there. It's a little bit thinner lace than the opposite side, and that's because it's already been worked once. I could add another one, but just going to keep it simple and go for another round of 6. Leave it at 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Great. Now we just drop one more. We go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Again, we just have our half knots. We go one under, one back the other way. All right. So, looking at what I have here, let's see if it's enough to complete the rest. Let's see, 1, and it could be, but it's close. I might reserve this for a handle. Let's see what we're left with over here. Which might be enough. No, it's about the same. All right, so we'll save these for potential anchor points for handles, and we'll take out two arm lengths of this guy. So we'll go 1, 2. All right. Give it a little bit of a taper cut. Save this for potentially another handle on another drum, or we'll see what we end up with here. Similar to what we just did before, we're going to go over and under as long as we come out through the middle here. 1, let's see. Let's go 2. All right, now this little bit, again, it's going to get buried, but we're going to have to tuck it in between, like right here. Let it get cut short. We don't need that. All right, make our bobbin again. Big hand, 1, 2, 3. That's good. I just did kind of 3.5, almost 4. Take the rest, wind it over and over and over. All right. So we're going to go under these 4 strands. We'll pull it real tight. We're going to start burying this kind of secret knot that we created. 1, 2, 3. Quite a lot came out there. 3. 4. 5. 6. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Nice. All right. Going to come under and up through. Leading 1. All right. First one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Just like before, it does seem a little thinner, lighter work. So I'm going to add one more 8. All right, you got to 8. And just made such a small difference. I don't think it's going to be too easy to see from the other side, but it's there. I know. 1, 2, whoa. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Cool. All right, last one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right. Tie up just like before. Another knot. Come back the other way, and boom. All right. So now we have this great X pattern, which makes this ambidextrous to hold with either your left or right. And we're going to start finishing off by tucking down all of these pieces that are popping up. Obviously, it's just they're going to just push them down, hold them for a few seconds. Sometimes you'll have to get clamps to hold them down, which I might have to do here in a second. But sometimes just massaging them down and holding them is just enough to do that. What you really want to make sure is that the edge just covered. So like with this guy, we'll push it down, see where it's at. Yeah, just gotta get a clamp for that guy. Some naturally stay down. This is like where you might think like, oh, I really want to cut that. Well, it might dry in a way that you won't like, and now, for a lot of drums, it's time to consider if you're going to throw a handle on there. With a drum this heavy, you'll probably get fatigued a lot sooner. So I'll show you how to make the handle. So usually, starting from one of these places where we ended with a lot of slack, you want to decide if that's a good place to hold it for you. I think that would be a great place to have a left-handed one. I am right-handed. So I will probably hold it something like this. So what you do is you just kind of hold it like as if you were playing it, and then imagining yourself letting it go, and seeing where it would naturally be a good strap. So for my opinion, I think right here is a really good place. I'm going to go over once and twice, and this is going to create a little bit of friction so that when we tie that knot here in a second, it's going to bind up really nicely. All right, so about right there, enough space to where it's not holding my hand in, but my hand could easily slide out, especially because of what we do right now. So I went over and under twice right here so that this knot could bite right here. What's going to happen is, like, as this gets drier, this is going to really tighten up, and it's not going to move from that spot ever again. What I don't want it to do is slide down. In the meantime, I just go over once, come back over, and what I'm building is at least a 3-strand center, which I think we're going to get to. Maybe we'll get to 4. And with this 4-strand center, which I'm going to complete by just tying off this little knot right here at this end, is giving a structure for the last piece of rawhide to wrap around and kind of create a really nice handle. The thicker the handle, the more comfortable it tends to be. So 4 is on the higher end. I used to have like single strand laces, and they felt like they were cutting me. which I didn't like. All right, so now I come back over here, done with this. Let's snip this off. I'm going to use this for my wrap, and if we lose the paper, if we run out of space for enough wrap to complete this, that's going to be okay. We're going to be able to solve for that in a second here. So let me just make sure have all this all bound up nicely. All right, we do. That's good. That's good. All right. So now it's pretty simple. We're just gonna tie these four together here at the bottom and make sure that the end points up because it's gonna be the first thing that we wrap, and it's gonna hide it. It's gonna hide the little work area. All right, so now we'll just start going around and around. Now this time it's a little bit harder to make a bobbin because you're gonna be wrapping so fast, but we're gonna try it anyways. All right, so there we go. 1, 3, 4. We're just going around, and these ones isn't touching right now because I'm not sure if I have enough lace. If I do have enough lace, I'll cinch it all down so that it would appear as if it's touching as it goes around. But we'll see if we even need to do that. All right, so after I'm done with this handle here in a second, I'm just gonna snip off the extra bits of excess that I'm not gonna be able to use. Sometimes birthing a drum is called that because this is the umbilical cord. It's usually where you hang your drum to dry for the next day. But because this is gonna be on a drying rack, plus I'm going to be adding the clamps that are going to kind of give it a legs for sort of like a table as it dries. I won't need that here in a second. But the clamps, they have to be on for a temporary amount of time. They do have to come off because otherwise they could leave their footprint into the rawhide, and that won't be very pretty. So we're going to avoid that. Grab this last lace here, tie it in with the remainder of our handle strap, which is looking good. Now the handle strap, you have to kind of give it a little bit of structure as it dries. Otherwise, if it turns into like a zigzag or an S, it will dry like that and it will be uncomfortable to use. So just make sure that sometimes if you hang it on a tree especially, you find a nice round, short branch, and then it's really easy to maneuver. So I set that right there, this right there. Nice. And what's this guy? Just a little bit extra. All right. So now I'm gonna go put my clamps on this to make sure that they stay folded down as it dries. This is pretty, it almost has a sound, which is impressive considering that it's very, very wet still, which tells me that it's gonna dry very nicely and produce a good tone. So again, this is 24-inch drum, a double spiral inverse, so it's an X. This makes it ambidextrous. We're going to go clamp these down for it to dry, and we'll hear its true sound tomorrow. And let's see, that was about an hour and 10 minutes. It didn't include what it took to dry out the giant piece of rawhide and cut it out, which was about, another 10 minutes. I've been doing this for many, many years, and that's hopefully why it's this fast. First time, I think it took me about 3 hours. That was many years ago. My classes are about 3 hours. Some people, don't always finish in the time. But, I'm learning ways to improve my classes so I can understand how to do that. One is just making them longer, kind of just picking and choosing which content I should be sharing. I like to overshare a lot of the history of drums, so things could get more efficient there. Well, thanks for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed. I'm Ricky Vegas, and if you'd like to attend a workshop or inquire about a custom drum for yourself, let me know. You can find me at RickyVegas3 at Instagram, Ricky Vegas the Yaki, and on Etsy, and you can always, there's always some way to find me. I'd love to hear from you. All right, have a blessed day. May Creator be with you. Oho, Matakuya Asa, and Lios and Chim Chokwe Vitesia.